Everybody, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new, welcome. My name is Mandy, and this is not the look I'm doing today. I went to edit the video that you were about to see, and I completely forgot to do an intro. So this is basically as full a face as I can get for Makeup by Mario, and what motivated my decision to make this video was me getting the new Surreal Skin Natural Foundation. I have it covered up, but I'll talk about it in the video. And the new Ethereal Eyes Nature Palette. So I bought these two things and I thought, you know, I have a few other products that I've had in my collection from Makeup by Mario. So let's just put them all together and see what we can come up with. But I'm mainly giving my review of these two things. I've swatched this. I give you my final thoughts. I do a check-in for this. I just forgot to film an intro. So without further ado, let's get into the actual topic of this video. Let's start with the foundation. So this is the Surreal Skin Natural Finish Foundation, not to be confused with the original Surreal Skin Foundation. This one was formulated for normal to dry and, according to the marketing, mature skin types. This one was formulated for more normal to oily skin, so it's not going to be as hydrating as this one or as luminous. I am in the shade 8N in this one, and I got 7C in this one. Don't ask me why. I didn't come to check what color I was in this before I ordered, but I did want to get one that was a cool undertone because so many foundations now tend to run yellow. So if I pick C, they're not necessarily cool, but they're a little less yellow. And I find that to be the case for this one. So it is a little bit runny, but that is 7C. And again, not what I would consider cool at all. Maybe a tad more neutral than the warm shades or even the neutral shades, but still a little bit on the warm side. Now the difference in the bottle is this comes in a frosted glass bottle, whereas the original came in more of just a regular glass bottle, which tracks because this is meant more for normal to oily skin with less of a hydrating finish, so more matte, so the matte glass. If you have both, it makes it easier to distinguish between the two, which I appreciate. This comes in 32 shades and it retails for $48. It claims to be not shiny or overly matte. It is a buildable formula with a natural finish that feels comfortable all day, non-drying, locks in moisture while increasing skin's hydration over time, sweat and humidity resistant, non-comedogenic, fragrance-free, and best for normal to oily skin. So this is probably about a half a pump's worth on this side of my face, and then on this side I have nothing. I do have a non-tinted SPF on today. It is one I have never tried before. It's one from Jan Marini, and I'll link it down below, which may or may not be smart for me to have done, but you can see there is no tint on my face. And if I look straight on, I don't see too much difference in the finish of the side with foundation on versus without. So it didn't make it more luminous, but it also didn't make it more matte. So I used about 1 pump for my face and about 1/4 of a pump for my neck, just to make everything mesh together. Now, I do feel like this does have a little bit of a warm undertone. It is not as warm as it could be, but it's definitely not cool. So keep that in mind when you're choosing a shade. If you really normally reach for neutral shades, you might want to go with the C shades. And there is a little bit left on my hand, so I want to pump out some fresh foundation next to it to show you that it indeed does oxidize. So this is the fresh foundation right here, and that is after sitting for maybe not even a minute. So it does get a tinge darker as it dries down. Here's a close-up of the foundation. I feel like one of the main marketing points is blurring. I don't know how much this blurred. I can still see my pores. I have more blurring formulas in my collection, but it doesn't make them look worse. I do not have a concealer from Makeup by Mario, so I just used my Chanel Sublimage, and now I'm gonna do bronzer and blush, which are both cream-based products. So the first is the Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer. This is a brand new one. If you have watched my channel a few years ago when this launched, I got this and I ended up loving it as a foundation. In fact, I have an Instagram on that. It's one of my most watched reels where I use this all over as a foundation. This is a brand new one. I think my daughter may have used it once, but I have not gotten into this one yet. I'm gonna start with the other end of the F4 brush by Makeup by Mario. What I do know is that this is a very subtle product. Soft Sculpt is a really good name for it because it is soft in appearance. Like, you can tell I put some product up there and then it's doing a little bit of a contour bronze situation, but it's not overly noticeable, which for someone with a really heavy hand like myself, that's not a bad thing. This is luminous, so you are gonna be adding some luminosity to your skin. They do have powder bronzers. I have not tried those yet. If you have, please let me know your thoughts. But that would be more appropriate for somebody with super oily skin that doesn't like to add luminosity to the face or the skin, or, you know, in general. So definitely my skin looks more luminous now that I have applied that product than with just the foundation. Now I'm going to use blush, and I'm gonna tell you, I had this blush for maybe 2 days before my oldest stole it from my room. I had to go pick it out of her vanity upstairs. So I've not been able to use this as much as I hoped to, but she sure loves it. This is the Soft Pop Plumping Blush Veil. So it's kind of the exact same formula as the Skin Enhancer. At least it feels that way to me. And this is in the shade Barely Blushing. So I'm gonna take my BK Beauty A507, which is my favorite for cream blush. And I think Barely Blushing is a really good name for this because it is a very soft color. It is buildable, but you're not gonna get like a ton of pigment with this, which is probably why my daughter loves it so much. But you do still get like a soft wash of color on the skin. Now I'm going to set it all down with powder. In my T-zone, I'm gonna be using my Fit Glow, which is what I use every single day, no matter what other powder I'm using to set the rest of my face, because it just keeps that area as shine-free as I personally want it to be. And then for the rest of my face, I'm going to use the Surreal Skin Soft Blur Setting Powder. I have 2 shades in this, Fair Pink and Neutral Light. I got these because I was curious about how they worked myself. I got Fair Pink to set the under eyes and Neutral Light to set the face. While I liked them okay on myself, for some reason I like them better on other people, so I ended up putting them in my kit. But I'm gonna be using Neutral Light on the rest of my face just to lightly set, especially like on my jaw, underneath the cheekbones, but I wanna leave the cheeks alone because they do leave a really pretty luminous finish. I don't have a highlight for Makeup by Mario, and quite honestly, I don't need one. So I'm done with the face. I do wish that the Soft Sculpt was a little bit more noticeable because I just feel like I'm used to more bronzer on my face, but it's fine. Now let's go to the eyes. This is what I'm really wanting to talk about. The brand new Ethereal Eyes Nature Palette. Now, I am still in my single shadow era, okay? Quads at most. I rarely pull out my big palettes. Every once in a while, I'll pull out my Sigma or a Natasha Denona. But otherwise, I just don't have any use for them right now. But when I saw this palette start to be promoted on social media, I was like, yeah, I need that because of these 2 green shades. And green is my absolute favorite color of all time. I love green any way I can get it. And when I saw those 2 green shades, which makes sense that it's called Nature because it does give those warm, earthy tones, I was like, I need to have this. So the day it launched, I ordered it. The only other Ethereal Eyes I have is the original, which I think came out for like a very small amount of time, or either earlier this year or last year as a re-release. This one I love. You can see this shade I have very much hit pan on. I didn't love it as much at first as I do now, but it has just grown on me. I love everything about this palette. So I was really expecting the same of this palette. I don't know that I got it, but let's jump into the look and I will tell you why. Now I am going to start with this Master Matte's Longwear Cream Eyeshadow that I picked up too in Sandstone just because I was curious. And I have not used this yet, and I am realizing it is not as dark as I thought it would be. That is exactly the same shade as the concealer I use on my eyes. Okay, well, maybe it'll give some tackiness, and I can use this in lieu of a concealer because clearly it's the exact same shade. But let's go into the Nature palette. I'm first going to show you some swatches. I did 2 separate slides. I did the mattes first, so you can see there are 5 matte shades in this palette. There are 12 shades total, so 5 matte and 7 shimmer shades. But the matte, you've got like a very skin tone color, which you probably don't even see swatched on my arm because it blends in. There's 2, good crease colors, and then 2 deepening smoky colors. One, the darkest, is great for eyeliner. And then when you switch over to the shimmer swatches, you can see that there are the 2 green shades, a burgundy, a bronze, and a couple of champagne shades. One is more of like a matte shimmer. It definitely is not as apparent when used that the shimmer is in it, but there is shimmer in the formula. When I first used this palette, I was very confused because the shimmers do not perform like the shimmers in this palette do. And I will put up a picture real quick of 4 of my favorite shimmers from this palette. And if you go back to where I swatched the shimmers in the new Nature palette and compare the 2, the one in the original is so much more opaque. It has so much more pigment to the shimmers. It has more shimmer to the shimmers. These are just a little bit more of a watered down version of the original eye palette. And I don't know why. I don't know why the formula was changed, because it clearly was changed. They just don't perform the same. The mattes are fine. I used this shade in my crease for the first look I did, and it became way deeper on the eye than it is here, and it almost looked almost gray versus this warmer brown. So I'm gonna start out with this pink shade today, because I do feel like they swatch and apply a little bit darker than they appear in the pan. So I don't know if you can tell, but when I apply this, it doesn't look pink. A, it's darker than it looks like in the pan, and B, it just looks like a brown with a little bit of a cool undertone, which would be fine if that's what I thought I was getting, but I thought I was getting a much more pinky brown. So let's try one of the greens I haven't tried. I tried this lighter green down here, and I didn't get any green on my eyes. I didn't get much pigment at all. So let's try this shade right here and see if I can get it to show up a little bit more. Definitely knock product off. Okay, that one shows up more green than the first one. It's not overtly green. To me, it's not as green on the eye as it is in the pan. But I'm gonna put a little bit of this burgundy shade. I don't need it to be darker because it's kind of dark, but we're just gonna play around. I'm just gonna put a little bit on the outer corner, see if that does anything. Little bit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this bright shimmer shade down here and see if I can lighten just the middle. Just a little bit. That definitely helps brighten. And so far, out of all the shimmers that I have used, this one has the most amount of pigment. And then I'm gonna take this super dark brown, do a little bit of a smoky liner. I'm gonna see on the bottom lash line what it looks like to use this shade down here, because while it blended into my skin when I swatched it, I'm wondering if it's gonna show up darker like the rest of the shades if I use it underneath my eye. A little bit. I don't know if y'all are gonna be able to tell a difference. I can see a slight, subtle shading, but that's all I want. I'm not trying to put any of the darker crease colors or greens underneath my eye at this point. I am gonna take a little bit of that bright shade again for the inner corner and just a little bit down on the lash line. I do not have a mascara from Makeup by Mario, and I just bought this one and used it for the first time today. This is from Maybelline, the Falsies Surreal, and I got black brown. So far, so good. We'll see how it wears throughout the day. And to finish off with lips, I got this as like a gift with purchase in one of my orders from Makeup by Mario, and this is the Plumping Lip Color in Soft Blush. So I'm pretty sure this is just like a deluxe sample. It's a pretty pink shade. It does have some shine to it, which I appreciate because I don't feel the need to add a gloss on top. I feel a slight plumping sensation, but it's nothing uncomfortable. So off the bat, nothing negative to say about that. So this is the finished look. For me, I do wish I had a little bit more bronzer on, but that's not the product's fault. It's the fact that I got light medium. So I would probably get medium if I wanted to use it more as a bronzer, but I will also be using that as a foundation because I do remember loving that. The foundation palette is not what I would call bad, but it is not as good as the original, in my opinion. The formulation is just not the same. So I do like the green that I used. I don't love how everything seems to be darker on me, at least in the mattes, than what it looks like in the pan. So my recommendation would be to keep an eye out if he ever releases this again for a short amount of time, grab that. But I'm not overly wowed by the new one. The foundation is good. This is not the first time I have worn it. I do feel like less is more. The very first time I wore it, I used a little more than I used today, and I didn't love how it sat on the skin. It does look much better when I just use one pump on the face. Overall, Makeup by Mario is not a bad brand. I know there are some staple products that people swear by that I have not personally tried, like the eyeliners and the lip liners. I haven't tried the concealer. Again, the powder products I'm a little interested in. Not a bad brand. Not my favorite either. I'm not sad about having this. I much prefer the new one to the old one. The old one was way too luminous for my taste. It just is not what I particularly look for in a foundation. And quite honestly, I wore it for like a week and a half to get ready for the video I did on it. And after that, I rarely pick it up. So that tells you kind of my thoughts on that one. I do feel like I'm gonna pick the new one up a little bit more. The wear time on the foundation is fine. I'm actually gonna do a check-in. So it is currently almost 11 o'clock in the morning. I will check in probably in 7 to 8 hours and show you how this looks on the skin after wearing it all day. But I have not had no issues with it wearing it previously. This is not the best lighting because, well, it's October and it's getting darker earlier, but I did want to bring you in as close as possible. It is breaking apart on my chin and around my nose because for some reason my skin decided it wanted to be really dry today, and it hasn't been this dry in forever. And I can only think it's because I forgot to put my St. Jane oil on right before I went to bed last night. But other than that, you can see like it's not patching off. I did add some more bronzer to my forehead, but it's not patching off there. I've worked out. It was a leg day, so I did sweat quite a bit. It's been on for 6.5 hours now, which, I mean, I typically wear my foundations for way longer than 6.5 hours, but it gives you a good idea. And even with, I don't know how close I'm gonna be able to get, even with the dryness around my nose and on my chin, it's still wearing pretty well. So for something that's formulated for normal to oily skin, it doesn't sit really bad on dry skin. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how it wears throughout the day, at least on me. So while I'm not sad I have it, I don't necessarily think it's one you need to drop what you have and go out and purchase, at least in my opinion. Thank y'all so much for watching. I will see you in my next video, and I hope you all go out and have a very blessed day.